I want to quickly talk to you about IRS Schedule B, line by line instructions, how to report your interest, dividends, and foreign accounts. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. How are you today? I hope you're all doing fantastic. I'm doing marvelous if you're to ask me. If you are doing as great as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. Today's conversation will be around Schedule B, and we're showing you right now on the screen the permanent link on of that form on the IRS websites. And Form 1040 Schedule B, simply referred to as Schedule B, is basically a tax form that allows you to detail your interest and dividend income for the year. And it also allows you to identify whether or not you had income from or ownership of certain foreign accounts. So most people really don't need to use Schedule B. You generally only need to file Schedule B, meaning fill it out and attach it to your federal income tax return if you had taxable interest or ordinary dividends worth more than $1,500 in 2020, or any tax year for that matter. And your taxable interest is usually listed on Form 1099 INT, and it includes what you get from a savings or checking account, certificates of deposits, aka CDs, and bonds. And ordinary dividends are usually listed in Box 5B of Form 1099 DIV, and include most dividends you get from stock investments. Let me open a quick parenthesis here, folks, before I move on with Schedule B. Let's talk about 1099 INT, 1099 DIV, 1099 OID, and 1099R. This is an important topic because amounts reported on those four forms could impact the amounts that you ultimately report on Schedule B. All right. So what is a 1099 INT tax form? This is a record that someone, a bank or other entity, paid you in interest. And if you earn more than $10 in interest from a bank, brokerage, or other financial institution, you will receive a 1099 INT. And the 1099 INT is a common type of IRS Form 1099, which is basically, it shows whether an entity or person, not your employer though, gave you or paid you money. And you might receive this tax form from your bank because it paid you interest on your savings. And the form will have your social security number or tax identification number on it. And which means what? It means that the IRS will know you have received interest. And it will know if you don't report that income on your tax return. So simply receiving the tax form does not necessarily mean you owe taxes on that money. You might have deductions that offset the income. For example, or all of it might be sheltered based on characteristics of the assets that generated it. Okay? In any case, I want you to remember that the IRS knows about it. So what do you do with the 1099 INT form? So we're showing you right now the form on the screen. You can see here. So you have, this is the form as well as the direct link to the IRS. So you use Form 1099 to help figure out how much income you received during the year and what kind of income it was. You will report that income in different places on your tax return, depending on what kind of income it was, right? So if you need, basically, you have to make sure that whatever you receive from any authority, any entity during the year, 1099 INT, 1099B, you have to report it on your tax return. So we're showing you right now actually the 1099 DIV. So the first one was 1099 INT. Now we have the 1099 DIV. Do you see that on the screen? It's there. So we're showing it to you, as well as the link on the IRS websites. Again, here it's pretty self-explanatory. You put your info there. This will be sent to you, by the way. And you have 1099 OID. You might receive Form 1099 OID if you bought bonds, notes, or other financial instruments at a discount to the face value or redemption value at maturity. So typically the instruments must have a maturity of more than 1 year. So this is what it looks like. You can see it on the screen here, along with the link, the permanent link of that page of that form on IRS website. And then we have the last one. You have 1099-R. So if you got distributions from a pension, retirement plan, profit sharing program, IRA, or annuity, you might receive a 1099-R. Remember, many retirement plans are tax advantaged, so this form might be simple record keeping on behalf of the IRS. And if you took a loan from your retirement plan, you might have to treat it as a distribution, which means it might be on this form too, as well as permanent and total disability payments under life insurance contracts. So here it is. You can see. So basically, let me just say in general, Schedule B is very easy to fill out, and there is really no harm in completing it if you aren't sure whether or not you need it. It can also help you to complete the rest of your tax return. I'm talking here about your 1040. All right, who has to file Schedule B? Most people don't need to complete Schedule B, but it's important to know about the form and the conditions for filing it. There are 8 situations, and only 8 as of the date of this show. 8 situations where you may need to attach Schedule B to your Form 1040. And if you're not sure, you may just want to fill it out. The IRS instructions for Schedule B also have more on exceptions to the scenarios below. So, first scenario, you earned more than $1,500 of taxable income or ordinary dividends. So taxable interest includes what most people get from their savings account, and ordinary dividends are what most people get from investments in brokerage accounts. So dividends you earn in retirement accounts are not included because you don't pay tax on them while they are in your account. So the first scenario. Scenario number 2, you received interest from a seller financed mortgage. So these are mortgages where you personally extend a mortgage loan to a home buyer, like a wraparound mortgage. And the key exception here is that you only need to include the interest if the buyer used the property as their residence. Scenario number 3, you have accrued interest from a bond. And this only covers accrued interest, which is interest that a bond has earned but that has not been collected yet. So you may have accrued interest if you bought a bond between interest payment dates and you pay the accrued interest to the seller. Scenario number 4, you are reporting an amount of original issue discount. That's what OID stands for. So you are reporting an amount of originally issued discount that is less than the amount shown on your Form 1099 OID. So OID, basically, I think I kind of explained that before. OID is a type of interest that's most common when someone buys a bond for less than its face value, its original issue price. So the difference between the face value and the purchase value of a bond is its OID. And scenario number 5, you have an amortizable bond premium, and you're using the amount of it to decrease your annual income from bond interest. So just kind of go back to accounting 101 here. A bond premium occurs when a bond is sold for more than its face value, and the opposite is true for a bond discount. Okay, so the amortizable bond premium, or ABP, is the value you paid above the bond's face value. Scenario number 6. You have U.S. savings bonds from Series I or EE. They were issued after 1989, and you are planning to exclude the interest from your income. So this is very important. I want you to pay attention here, folks. So you can deduct this interest using Form 8815 if you meet 4 criteria. 4 criteria, very important. In 2020, you cashed a Series I or EE bond that was issued after 1989. You paid qualified higher education expenses for yourself, your spouse, or a dependent. Your filing status is not married, filing separately. And your modified adjusted gross income for 2020, your MAGI for 2020 was less than $97,350 if you file as single, head of household, or a qualifying widower, and less than $153,550 if you are married, filing jointly. Scenario number 7. You are reporting interest or ordinary dividends that you received as a nominee. So you are basically a nominee if you received interest on behalf of someone else, such as a spouse or dependent. Scenario number 8. You have a foreign financial account or trust that you either received a distribution from, were the grantor of, were transferred to, in other words, transferred money into it, had a financial interest in, or had a signature authority over. All right, we actually have an entire series of shows on trusts and wills. So you might want to double check that to know how trust works, to understand the inner workings of trust. So who has to file Schedule B? Just to quickly recap here, there are 8 scenarios. You earn more than $1,500 of taxable interest or ordinary dividends. You received interest from a seller finance mortgage. You have accrued interest from a bond. You are reporting an amount of original issue discount that is less than the amount shown on your Form 1099 OID. You have an amortizable bond premium, and you are using the amount of it to increase your annual income from bond interest. You have U.S. savings bonds from Series I or EE that were issued after 1989, and you are planning to exclude the interest from your income. You are reporting interest or ordinary dividends that you received as a nominee, and you have a foreign financial account or trust. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another section of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. So let me show you now how to fill out Schedule B, line by line. So Form 1040 Schedule B has just 8 lines divided over 3 sections. And if any line of section doesn't apply to you, you can either leave it blank or writing a 0. All right. So Part 1, interest. So this section, you can see it on the screen. We're showing this on the screen right now. You have to put your name and your social. And this section has you add up all your sources of interest. So if your interest income is less than $1,500, then you don't actually need to attach Schedule B to your tax return unless another part of the form applies to you. If you have more than $1,500 or interest, make sure to complete also Part 3. So line 1 is a really large section of the form. And this is where you name all your sources of interest and how much interest you made from each source. Write each source on its own line. The only interest you should not report here is tax-exempt interest, which is primarily from state and municipal bonds. So make sure to list all of the interest that was reported on your forms 1099 INT or 1099 OID. You want to list the interest you earned as a nominee. You are a nominee, as I said a little earlier. You are a nominee if you basically received an interest payment, but the interest is actually owned by someone else. Okay, and also include interest from any mortgages you financed for someone else if the person used the home as their residence, and interest from U.S. savings bonds that are Series EE, H, and I should go here, even if you plan to later exclude that interest from your income. So after that, you just have to add up all your individual interest sources and write the sum on line 2. And line 3, you need to write the amount. You can see it here on the screen. So you need to write the amount of interest from U.S. savings bonds that you are excluding from your income. If you do have interest to exclude, you will also need to complete Form 8815. And you want to subtract line 3, which is the total interest, from line 2, the excludable interest, and you want to write the answer on line 4. And the value on line 4 of Schedule B also goes on line 2B of your Form 1040 or 1040 SR. Now let's talk about Part 2. Part 2, this is the ordinary dividends. As you can see right now, we're showing you on the screen. So Part 2, basically, this section asks you to add up all your sources of ordinary dividends. So as with interest income, if your dividend income is less than $1,500, you don't need to use Schedule B unless you need to complete another part of the form. You must also complete Part 3 if you have more than $1,500 of ordinary dividends. So line 5 is basically where you write all your sources of ordinary dividends and how much you made from each source. And for most people, you can find this amount in a box 1A of Form 1099 Div. So you want to add up all dividends amounts and you want to write the sum on line 6. And this value will go on line 3B of your Form 1040 or Form 1040 SR. And now we move on to part 3. Part 3, you have foreign accounts and trust. So you can see it here. So this part is only 3 questions that you answer by checking a box yes or no. Very simple. So complete this part if you had more than $1,500 of interest or ordinary dividends from earlier in Schedule B. Also, you want to complete this section if you had, let's say, you had financial interest in a foreign account or say a trust at any point during the fiscal year. And line 7A is a box that you need to put a check mark in if you, at any time during the year, had a financial interest in or a signature authority over a financial account that's located in a foreign country. So this can include a bank account, it can be a brokerage account, it can be other investment account. It really depends. And if the answer is no, you want to move to line 8. And if you check yes here, you also need to complete an attached Form 114, which is the report of foreign bank and financial accounts, also called FBAR, from the Federal Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. And you want to check yes on line 8 if you received a distribution from a foreign trust, if you are the grantor of a foreign trust, or if you are the transferor of a foreign trust, meaning you transfer money into it. If you check yes, you'll likely need to complete Form 3520. The thing here is that don't attach Form 3520 to your tax return though. Mail it to the address in the form's instructions. All right, folks, this is it for Schedule B. This was a short convo, and I just want to quickly recap here. Now, one thing you need to know is that most people don't need to fill out Schedule B, but it may still be helpful to understand the whole thing, especially if it applies to you. You can still file it. The IRS will determine whether it applies to you. And Schedule B is necessary if you had more than $1,500 of interest from bank accounts and ordinary investment dividends. And you want to fill out Schedule B if you are reporting an amount of interest that is different from the total amount you earned for the year. And you may need to file Schedule B if you own or receive money from a foreign financial account. So in this show, I explained to you what is Schedule B, who has to file it, how do you file it, the 3 parts, the interest, ordinary dividends, and foreign accounts and trust. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. I will see you next time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.